What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about Grand Admiral Thrawn, and specifically how we feel he was represented in Star Wars Rebels. I got to talk to Timothy Zahn at DragonCon, and I asked him that question because he created the character. I wanted to see if he was pleased with how his baby was handled in the show. And so we're going to play that clip from the interview, and then we're going to discuss it afterwards. But take a look. So maybe let's jump over to Rebels for a little bit now that it has wrapped up. How do you feel Thrawn was represented in Star Wars Rebels?
They did a really good job. They not only understood the character and how to write for him, but they also understood the meta around him, how you defeat him. The only way to defeat Thrawn is to throw something at him he can't control or can't anticipate. Given perfect knowledge and control, Thrawn will always find a way to win. But they understood this is how you defeat him. These are the things we can use against him. So, and his portrayal in general, just very good. He's smart, he's anticipating, he's a step ahead of everybody. He's looking at clues and picking up on them. So I was very pleased with how the Rebels team handled the character.
Yeah, I mean, how can you anticipate space whales coming in?
Right, exactly.
Oh, and of course, Pelion got a shout out.
I was not expecting that as well, or even Jason, the Hera's son named Jason, and spelled the correct way. I mean to ask Dave Filoni at some point, okay, so how did you know that Han and Leia named their son after Hera's child? That's just, because I never explained that in the book.
So yeah, I'm very pleased to hear that Timothy Zahn is pleased with how his character was handled in Star Wars Rebels. What do you think?
I feel like he had a really good level of involvement when they decided to put Thrawn in Rebels, and all those people know and love the Thrawn books, and they know his story really well, especially Dave Filoni. And I think it's great that he had so much involvement, and Dave Filoni took everything he said and was like, okay, this is how we're going to write Thrawn into Rebels, and they didn't stray too far, from his Legends character, so yeah.
I agree. I mean, they changed his history, and that's kind of it. It's clear that they had so much respect for Thrawn, and they knew that they had to do him justice, and they even talked about bringing Timothy Zahn in to consult in the early days, and I think all of that is great and that it shows. I remember my favorite episode for Thrawn was Through Imperial Eyes. That to me was just quintessential Thrawn. He got to do everything. He got to sleuth some things out. He used artwork to beat his enemies or outsmart them and figure out all these things. So that was kind of my dream Thrawn. I wish that he got to do that every single episode. I did feel like they leaned a little too hard on the we'll let them win this day because we'll win the war. And it's like, well, you let them go 8 times, Thrawn. And I get that you're letting them go, but it felt like that they just had too many run-ins with Thrawn. I think they should have kept running into Admiral Constantine or something, so like someone that was more bumbling. But it is true that, Thrawn was always beaten by something he couldn't have possibly predicted.
Yeah, I remember a random, I think it was an episode of Rebels Recon when, right after they first introduced Thrawn, they interviewed a woman that was in charge of designing him, and they spent all this time explaining just how big of a Thrawn fan she was, and her whole desk was covered in Thrawn stuff, and she had all the Legends books, and so I thought that was really cool. Yeah,
I think that one last thing that I was a little iffy on was in the season finale, or the series finale, excuse me, when Ezra surrenders and Thrawn keeps bombarding Lothal. I thought that was a little bit too much, and I would kind of credit that to being Rebels is a kids show, and they need to make the good guys and the villains a little more clear cut. And then you read the books and the comics and stuff, and Thrawn is not that kind of guy. I don't feel.
I don't know. I think maybe after being introduced to the Bendu,
it's like, I gotta make sure there's no more space moose down there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like after his run-in with the Bendu, And that kind of like defeat, I don't know, like something probably got in his head.
You know what? You just kind of talked me into that, because he's run into the Lothal crew so many times, and yeah, they got away on Atollon, and in Thrawn Alliances, Vader like does not let that go.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, he's like, I have to make sure Ezra doesn't do anything, so I'm going to keep bombing his city until he is here on my ship. So, you know, that actually does make some sense.
Yeah.
Okay. You turned me over. I did want to talk about his mention of Jason Syndulla. I want to make it very clear that he was joking there. I mean, clearly he didn't name Jason Solo after Jason Syndulla, because that character never existed.
Yes.
And I feel like this is also a good time to play an audio clip from one of the other panels that he was on. It was just awesome Star Wars authors, and it was him and Christy Gold and Kevin Anderson, Michael Stackpole, E.K. Johnston. So many people were there. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But Tashi Station, I will link to them in the description. They were good enough to record the entire panel, but this is just Timothy Zahn's take on the switchover from Legends to canon.
In many ways, this was about all they could do once they decided to make new movies, because either they have to wipe out everything, which is not fair to the readers, or they have to go through all the books and comics and decide what is canon, what isn't. But to do that, they would need to know exactly what they wanted to do for the next 50 years with Star Wars. Even Marvel hasn't got it plotted out that far ahead. So by calling it Legends, we're putting it into the realm of King Arthur, Robin Hood. These are stories we keep telling, whether there's actually historical people to that or not, but we're still telling those stories. We're still enjoy hearing them. This is the same thing with the Star Wars Rebels. These are the stories people tell around the campfire. Whether they're true, whether there's a grain of truth, whether they're completely made up, they're good stories. They're fun to read. They're fun to listen to. And that's all. We're here to entertain. If, the story about Luke Skywalker and Grand Admiral Thrawn, we don't know if it's true. We're way away from Coruscant. We don't get much news out here. But it was a fun story, and we've heard of Luke Skywalker and the Grand Admiral, and it was a fun story. So it's not something to panic about. It's certainly not something to get all worked up about. The stories are there. They're still read. They're still enjoyed. What people do with the upper echelons is not our concern. We're here to entertain you, and we're doing our best.
So yeah, I just wanted to let you listen to that and kind of give you a sense that, one of the founding fathers of the EU is okay with everything that went on at Lucasfilm.
Yeah, and if you want to listen to that entire panel, we'll have a link to that below.
Right. But yeah, I think that's all we're going to say for today. And again, this was just one chunk of a full 20-minute interview that I did with Timothy Zahn. I'm still going to be putting out more videos from that interview to everyone here. But if you want to listen to or watch the entire uncut thing right now, I made it available to our patrons. Everyone at the $1 level and above can see it right now, and I've linked to that in the description as well. But if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel,
and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.